Welcome to the Parenting with Confidence podcast. I am your host, Teresa Alexander Inman, board certified behavior analyst and infant toddler developmental specialist. Now, I would like to welcome back Miss Lynne Bowman, the Glam grandma who knows how to get you to eat your veggies. Lynne, welcome again. Thank you so much for taking the time to really serve our audience. I really appreciate you being here.
Well, Teresa, I love what you're doing, and this is dear to my heart. So where we were and where we want to be is eating joyfully. Let's talk about that. It's so important. We have people eating out of bags, in cars, driving through, eating separately, eating at the game. Families now are doing this funny, crazy, busy thing where everything matters except mealtime. And to me, if you are throwing mealtime out of the wagon for everything else, you've got your priorities sort of upside down. And when you think about your goals as a parent and your hopes ultimately for your kids, what's more important, your baseball game, your soccer game, your cello lesson, or your memories of your family together? I really, not that you have to give up music or give up sports, but I think you have to be very, very selective with your kids. And if you are giving up the culture of table, whatever that means in your family, I mean, we're not the same. We have different food rituals and different meal rituals. But whatever that is, I suspect it means being together in the same room at the same time and with the people that you care about. Maybe they can't all make it that day, and maybe you aren't lucky enough to have a grandma like me at your table. Maybe you have an uncle, maybe you have friends. And when my kids were growing up, seems like we always had an extra kid or two or three at the table, and that was just fine with me. And it was all just part of the same deal. But we ate with utensils, with actual implements, forks and knives and spoons, and we had cloth napkins. They weren't fancy, but they were usually pretty clean, and they were folded, and everybody knew how that worked. And we ate on dishes, not paper plates. And everybody set the table, and everybody cleared the table. And from the time the kids could walk, literally, they knew that they didn't just leave the table. Mm-hmm. They brought their plate over, and they put their plate in the dishwasher, or they handed their plate to a bigger kid or a mom. It was all part of the same meal. Everybody had a role. Everybody mattered. And we all ate the same food. Maybe you didn't finish your spinach. Maybe you didn't love no, everybody loved mashed potatoes. I was going to say potatoes, but no. Is there anybody who doesn't love mashed potatoes? I don't think so. But the whole idea now of this deal where Junior eats one thing and Mary Ellen eats another thing, and Grandpa just won't touch this stuff, and forget about it. No, there is a meal that gets prepared lovingly, and hopefully, it's good, healthy, real food, and it gets put on the table, and everyone sits down, and then we talk. Because another thing that's happened, Teresa, is we have a couple of generations of kids who don't really know how to start a conversation or stop a conversation or be part of a conversation in a really healthy way, which just is jaw-dropping to me, because when I was growing up, wow, that was a big deal. Is you had to hold your own at the table. I was one of three siblings, and I was the youngest. So my brother and sister were both older and smarter and had done more in school than me and so on. But by golly, I had to really, stand up, sit down, I should say, for myself and hold my corner of the table. I learned how to argue in a productive way. I learned how to listen. I learned how to respectfully interrupt. I learned how to pass the salt. I learned the things that you only learn sitting at the table with family. It's hugely important.
It
Hugely.
is. And there are studies that show families who sit at the table together are less likely to, children are less likely to engage in crime and drugs and all these negative behaviors because they have an outlet. So you're comfortably sitting at the table talking to mom and dad about, whatever. Hey, how was your day? Well, this happened. And, parents allow you to process that without telling you what to do or think, just very, allowing children to be themselves and express without judgment. But yeah, I was really surprised when I heard that. And I thought, oh my goodness, I didn't realize the importance of families sitting at a table together eating. Yeah, because my mom always insisted that we all ate together. And I have to tell you, I didn't really like it. But I realized how important, it is.
You didn't like doing the dishes either. I didn't.
I didn't. And it was my job to do the dishes. And I'm just going to share with you, if I didn't get those dishes done, Miss Renee, my mommy, would wake me up at no matter what time she noticed the dishes were in the sink, whether it was 2:00 in the morning or whatever time, she'd wake me up because dishes needed to be done before you went to bed. So I had a responsibility. It taught me responsibility.
And it taught you teamwork.
Yes.
It taught you being part of something that mattered, which, you get that at baseball too, I guess, in a way. But to me, it starts at home. It has to be at home. And we aren't all fortunate enough to have parents, one or two or three, who are loving, kind, responsible people. Mine were good folks, and there wasn't a lot of yelling and stuff. And I know that every family is different that way, but still, it's your family, and that's where we work stuff out. That's where it all starts. And another thing we were going to talk about, which is important, is school lunch.
Yes.
And I wanted to share with you, I was on the school board here. We have a very small school district, but we're in this rural area where a lot of my neighbors are regenerative farmers and ranchers. They really are caring about raising animals and fruits and vegetables that are organic and healthy and restoring the soil and so on. So two things came together at our school district. One, the kids weren't eating their school lunches, that came out of the cafeteria, even though the cafeteria thought they were making really good food. And the solution for us was a couple of things. At the same time, we got a couple of our neighbor farm ranchers involved so that they would bring us food from their farms and ranches. But the kids got involved. The kids decided what we were going to serve in the school lunches.
Wow. That's huge, because when you it speaks to what you spoke about earlier. When they have a choice, when they're part of the process, they will more than likely eat it. Because I work in the school district here. And so often, it makes sometimes I just want to take that food and give it to a homeless person because at least they're having food. But children throw away the food so often. It just ends up, they'll just take it and they're forced to take it. They don't have a choice but to take that food, and it ends up in the garbage.
Right.
And that is really tragic.
It is so tragic. And so in our district, and it's an ongoing issue, but a big part of it was getting the kids involved, having the kids decide what would be served and how it would be served. One of the things, for example, that they all cared about, we have a very large Hispanic community here. And so they were lobbying for the food to have more sauces and more of the kinds of spices and ingredients that they were eating at home. And I mean, nothing better than a taco bar. If you have good things on the taco bar, all kids love a taco bar. But that's not necessarily going to be a thing that the school serves if they're doing it off of one of those trucks that comes up and delivers the food-like substance that's ready to eat. So we had good success with the kids choosing, and kids will really surprise you sometimes with what they offer as being the best choices for their lunch. But they're wise in their way, and they have good ideas, and they love choice. They love to be able to pick and choose what goes on their plate, and why shouldn't they? You know, that's normal. And they love color and texture and interesting flavors, sauces, you know, salsas. So I would highly recommend that for anyone who's listening, who's struggling, as Teresa and I have, with school lunches and how dumb and boring and not healthy and not interesting they are. Get the kids involved. First of all, as parents, get involved. What can I do to help the school lunch program? And because all schools are challenged with not having enough people and interest and so on to do some of the things that they need to do. So get involved and get the kids involved, and get the neighborhood farms and ranches, if you have any, involved, and get the kids going out to the neighborhood farms and ranches to see the eggs and see the spinach growing in the field and see the artichokes and see the trees with the, you know, it's stunning how few kids really have this relationship with food in the dirt, food growing. And that's what I would ask everyone to try and do in at least some small way, is put your hands and your children's hands in the dirt. I'm asking you to get dirty, aren't I? I love dirt, and dirt is where everything important comes from, and we think of it as dirt. It's gold. It's what matters. And also invite you to take a microscope out. It's kind of thrilling in a way. It's so interesting.
Yes, it's amazing what you see through a microscope, and you know, they can't see it with the naked eye, but then they become just in awe of it. Yeah. You know, one thing that you said too, getting them in the dirt and introducing them to that, I've noticed that there's some schools that had some small gardens, and the children, because they grew whatever, they were willing to try the beans and all the things that came out of those gardens, which is super amazing. And that could, you know, it may not be enough for a whole meal, but if they can supplement or complement, a different meal with some of those ingredients, that would be amazing. Because there's a lot of wasted space at schools. You know, there's a lot of land that's
asphalt. There's asphalt.
Yes. Yeah. That is true. So dig some of that up and, you know, have some plant beds and do something.
Yes. Yeah. School garden, huge. And I know that that's just another project for the teachers, for the administration, for the parents, so on. But I don't think there's anything more important that the kids are doing. You know, there's so much about a school garden. It's art, it's science, it's everything that matters. And the kids love it. If the parents, we had a situation where we had a school garden, but the gardener, she was a landscape architect, she wouldn't let the kids touch it.
Oh, oh boy.
So it has to be the right combination of people and teaching, and it's something that you have to, just like anything else, you have to stick with it and believe in it, and let the kids really get the benefit from it. I mean, our art programs also, you know, have been so by the wayside, and the music programs, it's very hard in the public schools now to keep all these things up. But I'm a big believer in the school garden, so thank you for mentioning that. It's huge.
Absolutely. Because first of all, seeds don't cost a whole lot. And secondly, you have a gardener to guide them, but then let them do the work. You know,
Yes.
and the garden that I'm talking to you about was at a preschool.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
was, yeah, there was a master gardener who came in, and she was all about having the children responsible for things. So
Yes.
these preschoolers were responsible for keeping the garden, for weeding it, for watering it, for doing all the things that it took to care for this garden. And because she was a mom of one of those students, and actually she oversaw everything, other moms came in to help, but the students were responsible. When it looks like this, we pick it. So they would go ahead and pick it. It's like, is this right? I'm like, and it was just amazing how they took
Yeah.
ownership of this garden. And again, preschoolers. So think, if you had elementary school students, they would totally own it. High school students, they would own this because it's theirs, and they would not allow anybody to disrespect their garden by doing something that would be,
Right.
wouldn't be constructive. So it was just truly amazing.
Yeah, it's really important. And another thing that I want to mention, Teresa, I know we don't have much time, but one of the big enemies of good health these days is sugar,
Yes.
because everything that your kids are going to want you to buy for them has sugar in it. Practically everything in a bag or a box at the store has sugar in it. And so that's a thing that I would get the kids looking for right away, and teach them how to recognize sugar in all of its forms and all the little words that they have on the label that mean sugar, but they sound like something else,
Right.
sucralose or whatever, maltodextrin. So, and I want to tell you that there are some sugar substitutes on the market today that are natural, that are delicious. And so it doesn't mean you have to stop eating sweets. It just means I want you to quit eating processed cane sugar, because it literally is as addictive as heroin. And I don't mean that in a metaphorical way. I mean, literally, it is addictive. And so if you are feeding your kids sugar, you are addicting your children to a substance that is going to wreck their health in some way or another. So in my book, Brownies for Breakfast, for example, the brownie recipe is made from nut butter, cocoa, eggs or egg substitute, and pumpkin, which is it's a genius substitute for flour and oil. It's fantastic. I also have recipes in the book for donuts made from pumpkin, not flour, not sugar, not oil, pumpkin. And they're delicious. You bake it in a brownie pan. You don't use like a hot fryer thing. And I show you how to come out with a pink frosted donut with sprinkles on it, no sugar.
Wow.
So know that it can be done. It's not hard. Your kids can do it. The recipes are not hard, but you just need to relearn some techniques, put some different things in your kitchen than you have been using in your kitchen. And there you go. You can have treats. You can have wonderful, yummy things. There's a granola recipe. Who doesn't love granola? But you need to make it with no sugar.
Absolutely.
You can do it. It's not hard.
No, it's so true. And I'll tell you, I don't think I've had sugar since, I think it's 2007 when I got rid of sugar.
Yay.
But the crazy thing is, though, I went to a function at school when I was studying for my master's. I don't remember what it was, but anyway, there was a meeting somewhere, and there was a Hershey's Kiss. I'll never forget it. And I thought, oh, well, one Hershey's Kiss won't hurt me. I had a headache from having that because I had not had sugar for so long. And because back in those days, substitutes were not widely available.
And they weren't great. either.
Yeah, exactly. You know, when you look at all the stuff that, you know, the chemicals.
Right.
Yeah, so
But
I
now, and I highly recommend monk fruit,
Mhm.
chicory root. There's several, and in the book, I have a whole list of them.
Mhm.
So if you haven't tried any of the newer ones, you should. They're quite good and easy to work with, and widely available. And the other thing, Teresa, is your body changes, your chemistry changes when you quit eating sugar, as you did, and as I have. And after 2 or 3 weeks, it just doesn't taste the same. It doesn't taste that good. And you really do lose your taste for it. And the chocolate, particularly, if you're used to eating good chocolate, real chocolate, and then you eat like a Hershey's Kiss, it's like, ew.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ugh,
Yeah. And just to think that small kiss made me feel horrible. Now,
yeah.
I'm going to share again a couple of stories with you. So
Oh
when we
boy.
had our, you know, our foster son come in, again, you know, so here we are, vegan, you know, no sugar, any of those things. And he came in from a place where, you know, it was all about the sugar. I mean, he brought fruit roll-ups. It's like, sweetie, we don't do fruit roll-ups in this house. Actually, after he left, I gave the fruit roll-ups away because I didn't, you know,
Yeah.
because I make my own, you know, a
From
little
real
bit.
fruit.
Yes, yes, I puree strawberries, add a little bit of honey to it, a little bit of lemon juice, and put it in my dehydrator.
Right.
And my husband loves it because he wanted he loves Twizzlers, so he wanted a substitute for something like that, something that was chewy and still
Yeah.
had some sweetness to it, and it worked out well. But it was just interesting though that our foster son, he didn't miss it. And I remember one day he had a visit with his mom, and she gave him, you know, and I only know this because it was in the box. He had nuggets from McDonald's and fries. That one day he came back and it was at the bottom of his bag. He had taken one bite out of the nuggets, didn't even touch the fries, and told me that he wanted to throw it away. And the drink he threw away because he said that's just too much sugar. It took him less than a month to get there.
Yeah.
So children can change. You know, we say that, oh no, they like this, they like that. If you change, they will. Like you said, especially if you're sitting at the table, because we saw a lot of that. If my husband or myself were sitting at the table with him, because my husband's not always home. So if one of us was sitting at the table with him, it made a difference. Like he'll try it, because when he first came to us, he's like, oh, McDonald's is good food. It's good for your eyes and it's good. And I said, because I told him one day, I said, that's not real food. And he goes, yes, it is. And every time I gave him something like a vegetable or whatever, I mean, he ate eggplant. And he was like, oh, this is real food. I said, yes, it's real food. And he started, he goes, it's good for my eyes, right? It's making my body healthy. You know what he said to me one day, which it just blew me away? He said, I know you love because you feed me real food.
This is such an important point. We have created this fantasy among parents that love is McDonald's, love is Disneyland, love is chicken McNuggets, whatever, French fries. Love is giving your kid the treats that you've been told on the television means love. That's not love. And it's a hard one to change that habit and re-gear. But yes, we want to love our children. We want our children to feel loved. But giving them crappy food isn't loving them.
It's really taking the easy way out. And like you said, it doesn't take a lot of time to cook something real. So give us some tips surrounding that.
Oh, I have so many. I have a lot, and they're all in my book. But I mean, one simple one is Americans, we don't eat soup anymore, but soup is such a fabulous way to take, and a recipe that I have in the book that I've used for years and years, I call it genius soup because it's genius. You know, and it's a very old-timey recipe, Teresa, where you take celery, carrots, and onions, and chopped, and you saute them, and you add broth and tomatoes if you have them, canned tomatoes if you have them. And then you take all the greens out of your fridge that you bought thinking that you were going to eat them, right? The spinach and the chard and the kale and all, especially dark greens, and you chop them up. And even if they're a little tired, a little not great looking, you just fill that pot up with greens, collards. And so many people think of collards as, I don't know, a Southern food, but they are, first of all, beautiful. I love the big leaves, and they're so nutritious. We have a garden full of them. So, and arugula, anything, and even, parsley or carrot tops, these things all go in the soup pot. And then you cook it all afternoon on low. Or and now everyone has Instapots or crock pots, you can use that. And so then you have this big bucket of super nutritious, really delicious soup. You've put a little seasoning in it, and then I freeze the soup. So I come racing in, I grab one of those quart jars of soup out of the freezer, take the lid off, run some hot water over it enough so I can get it out, put it in the pot, add a little more, just one of those boxes of broth, dump that in. And nowadays you can get and again, and I'm diabetic, so I'm very cautious about my carbohydrates and processed carbohydrates. So I will buy chickpea pasta, which is made out of one ingredient. Guess what? The ingredient is chickpeas.
And of course they add water, because otherwise they wouldn't be able to do much.
Okay, but don't add water. Don't add water. Just dump the chickpea, the whole box of chickpeas, into this pot of soup that you've got going now, and bring it back to the boil, turn it off, put the lid on. It sits there for 10 minutes. And these chickpea shells, which kids love shell-shaped pastas, they soak up the soup. So when you take the lid off, what you've got is the ultimate kind of grandma, warm, delicious, yummy, and put some nutritional yeast flakes or some grated Parmesan or some cheese on top of it. Oh my gosh, is it good? Add a little more salt and pepper, a little smoky salt, one of my favorites. It is so beyond delicious, fills your belly up because it's warm soup.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, it's just the best. And it has taken, literally, while that is heating up on the stove, you've fed the dog, cleaned the thing, gone out. I know what you're out there doing, you moms. And then everyone gathers for a bowl at the table. It took you practically zero time to do that, because you cooked Saturday or Sunday, you made this pot of soup, and now you've got a freezer full of it. And there are all kinds of other things, by the way, that you can do with this soup. That's just one thing.
Right. And that is genius. Thank you. It simply is, because I do the same thing. Actually, right now I've got a pot of soup going, and I use, I felt like something chickeny. So I use soy curls instead of, because I'm vegan. So I use soy curls, and I put some chicken broth in it. And, and I love chickpea pasta, and I didn't think of putting that in my soup, but I'm going to do just that. Another thing I'm glad you mentioned, carrot tops, because people throw those things away. So beet tops, because I buy the beets and I make sure that they come with the tops. So the tops of beets, the stalk of the broccoli, because we throw those things away. And then we buy it back from the store because they call it brocco slaw.
Right.
So we need
and one more thing, you made me think about it. The carrot tops and the beet tops make pesto. Pesto. People think of pesto as basil. No, that's pesto Genovese. That's one kind of pesto.
Right.
But what pesto is French or Italian grandmas. They take all these leafy tops, chop them very finely with nuts and garlic and Parmesan or Parmesan-like stuff, and some olive oil and a little lemon. And now you have this dense fabulous, fragrant thing that is all dark green veggies and protein. It's just the most nutritious thing you can imagine. And then put a blob of that in your soup, or put a blob of that on your plate next to whatever it is that you're serving. So good. And it costs you practically nothing.
Yes, absolutely. Because you're going to throw that away anyway.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
why
A
not?
little lemon in there, a little salt. Yeah.
Yes.
So good.
And then what I've found too, just by, hearing things, those things actually sometimes have more nutritional value than the
Yes.
actual vegetable itself.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. That's what we're saying. The parsley, the carrot tops, the beet tops, that's where the gold is.
Wow.
That's where the nutrition really is, especially if, like me, beets, because I'm diabetic or used to be,
Yeah.
the beets are intensely sugary. It's a good, healthy sugar, but still it's a carbohydrate. And so I have to be careful how much of that I eat. But the tops, I can eat that till the cows come home, no worries. And what I'm always trying to get people to do is eat more dark greens. Eat dark greens at every meal. Always find a way to put dark greens on top of or next to whatever you're eating. People don't eat enough green stuff.
So true. Yes, because the standard American diet does not have a whole lot of greens in it. And it's
no
from
greens, none.
Pyramid that doesn't even really, it was created by big food, just say.
Absolutely. And most people are eating beige and white and brown 3 or 4 times a day. I mean, think about it, the burgers and even the pizza is not fun, good pizza. It's boring, stupid pizza with practically nothing but cheese on it. Not even, I'm doing quotes for the cheese.
Well, yeah. Cheese like substance.
Cheese like substance, exactly. So mostly pizza that most people eat is just white processed flour of the worst kind. Yeah.
I once heard Deepak Chopra say that we should eat foods that are the colors of the rainbow, because then we get the energy from the sun. And I thought, wow. So that's what I make a concerted effort to do. So no matter what I eat, I try to make it, colorful. Lynn, are you there?
I am here. I lost you for a minute. Yeah. You're back.
I am. Yeah, you look frozen for a second. Yeah, no, I was just saying that, Deepak Chopra mentioned about, eating the food that are the colors of the rainbow, because then we get the energy from the sun through them. And it's just so important for us to do that. I want to ask you one question though. How did you manage diabetes? Because there are parents out there who they're probably diabetic and they manage it with medication. Please share with us your secret.
It's not complicated. It's exactly what we've been talking about, Teresa. It's just eating good food, real food, plant-based food. And then Michael Pollan added to that, not too much, but I challenge anybody, if you're eating real food, plant-based food, you can't eat too much. If you are not eating the foods that are designed to keep you eating. So it's not a problem. The foods that are a problem, the French fries and the Doritos and those things, are actually designed by engineers in buildings in New Jersey to addict people, to make it impossible, literally, for you to stop eating them. And I sound a little conspiracy theory here, but look it up. I'm not making this up. You can find this information. There are wonderful books on the subject. One called Hooked. Michael Moss is an author who writes about this stuff and does a great job. But if you're eating real food, whole food, and in my case, the diabetes, if you're moving, if you're exercising, and I'm pretty religious. I have a little class I do 3 days a week, and I walk and I do stairs and all those things. So the movement part of it has to be there. for sure. And so for me, I've never had insulin. I've taken a small amount of metformin most of my adult life. But interestingly, now metformin turns out to be the kind of a designer longevity drug, even for people who aren't diabetic. It's a thing that they want to take. So I don't know. I'm not going to speak to that. But mostly the way you bring your blood sugar down into normal, as I have, is eating real food, good food, whole food, not too much.
Absolutely.
Another thing is you don't have to feel like you need to eat 3 or 4 or 5 meals a day. You can skip a meal from time to time and it's perfectly healthy. We're talking about children largely, so this doesn't really apply to them so much, but we adults, we are not made to eat all day and all night.
Yes.
Yeah.
And thank you for mentioning that, because I intermittent fast, so I don't eat all day. And I've heard, and when I started doing that, it was because a nutritionist said to me, it's really important that you focus your eating in a certain time period, because then you give your body time to eliminate and digest, and then time to eliminate. Because when we eat, it's like our body is running a marathon. Your body does not want to run a constant marathon. You want to give it time to heal, time to digest, time to regenerate cells, instead of constantly focusing on digesting food.
I am all about it, and there's so much good information has come out in the last few years, science-based information. And one of my favorite new words, Teresa, is autophagy, which is the word. It means literally, it means eating self. But what it's referring to is this process that the cells undergo when you quit eating. After about 16 hours of not eating, your cells get this signal, okay, she's done. And it's like the road crew. And they come out with no traffic and they can clean up. And they do this process of literally eating dead cells and bits and pieces that are floating around in your body that don't need to be there, so that it can be, eliminated. But it can't happen unless you stop the traffic for a certain amount of time. And the last time I read about it, it was, I think, 16 hours minimum. But when you think about it, okay, that just means don't eat at night. Like, I stop eating. I don't know what your system is, but I usually stop eating at 2, 3, 4 in the afternoon latest. And then I don't eat again until the next day, 9, 10, something like that. And so, yeah, there's plenty of time for this autophagy process to take place. And when you think about it, it's so logical that your body, people talk about paleo, right? Diets. Well, I'm sorry, but in paleo times, nobody was eating 3 or 4 meals a day.
Exactly.
They were lucky to eat once a day, right?
So awesome. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate you being here, Miss Lynne.
Oh, this has been fun.
And I want to direct people to your website, lynnebowman.com, Lynnne Bowman.com, and get her book, people, Brownies for Breakfast. Who doesn't want brownies for breakfast?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, ma'am, for being here.